Chosen one. There is a room you've never seen, lit by cold white panels and glowing maps of the world, where people with clearance levels the average person can't even imagine sit around a long table staring at a single name on a classified slide, yours. In that room, they're not calling you crazy, dramatic, or too sensitive the way regular people did. In that room, your life is being discussed in the language of national security, protected assets, and internal threats. Someone slid a folder across polished metal, stamped with markings the public never sees, and when it opened, what spilled out wasn't just data. It was a full chronicle of your persecution, the coordinated character assassination, the financial sabotage, the isolation campaigns, the psychological warfare designed to make you doubt your own mind. They saw the pattern. They saw how much force was used against one person. They saw that every time you were pushed down, you stood back up sharper. Every gaslighting attempt only made your discernment stronger. Every attack on your name somehow amplified your signal. And at some point, in that soundproof room, a sentence was spoken that your spirit has already felt vibrate through your bones. Any unit, internal or external, that assists an operation against this individual is acting against what we are sworn to defend. They did not say your name like gossip. They said it like designation. They didn't label you as a problem to erase. They classified you as an anomaly that cannot be mishandled without consequences. Without cameras, without headlines, the unthinkable happened. The same machine that once allowed operations against you quietly flipped its stance and marked you as someone who cannot be targeted without crossing a red line. You thought you were fighting alone, but somewhere, the Pentagon already swore that standing against you is treason. If you're still here, it means that the Pentagon swore to defend you. Frequency is already alive in your field. You're not moving like a random civilian anymore. You're moving like a soul heaven and earth have quietly flagged as do not touch lightly. To lock that into your timeline, first write 111 in the comments as your "I agree I am protected" stamp. Then tap the thanks/super thanks button next to the subscribe button and send $111 as your protection seed. Stand on the promise that no weapon formed against you will prosper. And let this be your way of saying, I stand under that shield in every room, seen and unseen. The same protection you honor will start circling back and defending you in conversations, systems, and structures you will never physically step into. Chosen one. While that sealed room was studying your life like a classified case file, you were just trying to survive days that didn't make sense. You called it burnout, bad timing, maybe even karma. Because what else do you call it when your body starts collapsing for no reason? You remember waking up more exhausted than when you went to sleep, like something had been feeding on you all night. Your skin changed, your eyes dulled, your nervous system stayed locked on high alert even in silence. No diagnosis could capture it, no routine could fix it, and deep down you knew this was not normal fatigue. It felt like a drain had been installed somewhere in your field. At the same time, your career started glitching in ways probability couldn't explain. Projects that were lined up perfectly, guaranteed opportunities, conversations that should have opened doors, all suddenly fell apart at the last second with vague excuses and strange reversals. People who swore they had your back disappeared the moment your name became controversial in rooms you never walked into. You watched doors close that you never even knew were fully open. But the deepest cut came through relationships. Someone who knew your heart started looking at you like a stranger. They believed things about you that never matched your character. They treated rumors like evidence and your truth like manipulation. No matter how clearly you spoke, your words hit a wall that had been built long before you opened your mouth. What you didn't see then is what the Pentagon is staring at now. Those random collapses were coordinated waves. The timing of your exhaustion, the rhythm of your losses, the sudden shift in how people perceived you, none of it was organic. You weren't just unlucky. You were under an operation. While you blamed yourself, someone else was adjusting dials, running scripts, testing how far they could push you before you broke. They expected you to fold, to apologize for things you never did, to abandon your own perception and accept their manufactured reality. Instead, every strange day only hardened something sacred inside you. You kept walking. You kept feeling. You kept knowing. And that refusal to surrender your own truth is exactly what turned a private attack on your life into a national-level concern. Chosen one, the people who came against you were never just messy, emotional, impulsive haters. They were students of you. They watched you the way analysts watch an emerging threat, replaying your interactions, listening between your words, dissecting how you respond under pressure. Somewhere, long before that Pentagon room saw your file, a smaller, darker war room had already been built with you at the center of the board. They learned what lights you up, what shuts you down, what makes you hesitate, what makes you open your heart. They turned your tenderness into a map. They cataloged your patterns, your vulnerabilities, your loyalty, your refusal to abandon people even when they're wobbling. To them, your compassion wasn't something noble. It was an access point. They tested how long you'd stay after being disrespected, how many chances you'd give someone before you finally walked, how deeply you second-guessed yourself when someone you loved accused you of something that didn't feel like you. Every reaction you ever had became data. They built psychological profiles on you the way military think tanks model enemy behavior, running, "If we do this, they'll do that," simulations in their mind. That's why the attacks felt so eerily timed. They didn't just throw chaos at you. They rolled it out in phases. First wave to confuse you. Second wave to isolate you. Third wave to make you question your own perception. They thought if they could rewrite your reality from the inside, they'd never have to answer for anything on the outside. But there was one variable they miscalculated every single time. You are not just nervous system and trauma history. You are spirit. You are assignment. You are carrying codes that don't show up on their charts. So every time they thought, this will break them, something they couldn't measure pushed back. That unquantifiable force is exactly what started pinging on higher radar. The same patterns that convinced them they had you figured out are the patterns Pentagon-level eyes are now using as proof that you are not a threat to be neutralized, but a line that should never have been crossed. If you're hearing this, it means divine defense is already rearranging things in your favor. Files are shifting, stories are cracking, and the same rooms that once tolerated your persecution are now feeling the pressure of a higher law. To seal this over your life, first write 444 in the comments as your "I stand under divine verdict" stamp. Then tap the thanks/super thanks button and send $44 as your justice seed. Remember the verse that says, "God is the best of protectors." Let this be your agreement with that reality. The one who defended me in secret will now defend me in public. As you do, expect the protection you've sown into to start fighting for you in every hidden briefing, every closed-door meeting, every timeline where your name shows you. Chosen one. Somewhere inside that very network that studied you like a threat, one person went too far down the rabbit hole and didn't come back the same. At first, they were just another participant, another team player, repeating the script, nodding along in group chats, co-signing the narratives built about you. They believed the story they were handed, that you were unstable, manipulative, dangerous to be around. They laughed at the jokes about you. They rolled their eyes when your name came up. They watched you be turned into a cautionary tale and told themselves, "Well, there must be a reason." Then one night, not in a courtroom, not in a church, not in some holy place, but in the blue light of a screen and the silence of their own room, they saw too much. A missent screenshot, a forwarded email, an old chat log that shouldn't have been shared but was. Suddenly it wasn't just, "he said, she said," anymore. It was dates, timelines, exact phrases, strategizing, people talking about you like a project, like a takedown, like a problem they were hired to solve. They saw the jokes about how easy it was to turn others against you. They saw the satisfaction in someone typing, "They're finally starting to believe it." They saw messages where you tried to defend yourself, stripped of context, passed around and mocked. And in that avalanche of receipts, their stomach dropped because there, in black and white, was undeniable proof. You weren't overreacting. You weren't paranoid. You were under attack. And worse, they had helped. They had believed the lies. They had carried the poison. The cognitive dissonance hit like a car crash. Everything they thought they knew about you, about themselves, about who the good guys were, started to crack. In that moment they shifted, without announcing it to anyone, from participant to witness. They started scrolling back through their own memories with new eyes. "When they told me that story about you, did it even make sense? Why did I never ask for your side? How many times did I watch them twist your words and say nothing?" The guilt wasn't abstract. It was personal. It had your face on it. And that guilt became the first small doorway through which truth walked in. The same truth that would eventually carry your name all the way to rooms you were never supposed to be mentioned in, turning one of your quiet enemies into the loudest defender you never saw coming. Chosen one. Once that insider crossed the invisible line from participant to witness, the evidence in their hands stopped feeling like gossip and started feeling like a live weapon, something that would explode inside their own conscience if they tried to bury it. At first, they told themselves it was too messy, too complicated, not their place, but the screenshots burned behind their eyes every time they tried to sleep. The more they reviewed, the clearer the pattern became. This wasn't random cruelty, it was a playbook. The same pressure tactics they'd seen in training, the same wave attacks, the same emotional choke points used on whistleblowers and high-risk targets were being deployed against one civilian who simply refused to accept a lie. That realization snapped something. With shaking hands and a heart pounding, they pushed the file upward, not to a friend, not to a group chat, but through channels that care about patterns, not gossip. The drama around your name turned into a case packet, sliding across encrypted systems onto desks that handle things the public never hears about. Each person who opened it paused. They traced the timestamps, the coordination, the way your words were sliced out of context, and compared them to full logs where your tone and truth were obvious. They noticed how assaults on your character intensified exactly when your language shifted from broken to powerful, when your presence started waking others up. Somewhere along that chain, someone with real authority said the quiet part out loud. "If these methods are being used on this individual, we're not looking at normal conflict anymore. We're looking at an off-book operation colliding with a consciousness our own framework cannot classify as expendable. In plain speech, you lit up a system you never asked to be in, and your refusal to break forced your story out of too bad territory and into this crosses our own line. Chosen one, when your story crossed that unseen threshold and landed on the desks of people who sign off on missions, not memes, the conversation around your name changed. Behind those closed doors, they stopped asking, "Did this really happen?" and started asking, "How was this allowed to happen?" They laid your timeline against their own codes of conduct, their oaths, the treaties and charters they wave in public when they talk about freedom and protection. What stared back at them was ugly, the same psychological warfare they call unacceptable when used by hostile actors had been tolerated, even cheered on, when used against you. That contradiction was a breach, not of your sanity, but of their own rules. So they did what systems do when they feel a fracture under their feet. They reinforced. Quiet memos went out, not with your name in neon, but wrapped in language about unauthorized targeting of protected consciousness, informal campaigns likely to cause embarrassment, persons of interest flagged as non-engaged without review. Somewhere, in databases you'll never see, your profile shifted from soft target to off-limits. People who once felt bold enough to use your pain as a group project started getting subtle calls, random audits, unexpected questions about their judgment and use of resources. Operations that smelled even remotely like what was done to you began dying on the table with no explanation. You didn't see any of that. You only felt the air change. Smear attempts suddenly bounced instead of sticking. Rumors that once spread like wildfire now burned out in 2 conversations. Rooms that used to twist at the mention of your name went quiet instead, like everyone had just remembered there were cameras. You thought maybe the world was finally calming down. In reality, consequences had entered the chat. And the unspoken message under all of it was simple. Touch this one again, and you're not just fighting them. You're fighting the oath we swore in front of the world. Chosen one, you've been wondering why lately some things that should have destroyed you just didn't. Why that one conversation that would have finished your name never happened because the meeting got, mysteriously, canceled. Why the person who was about to leak something twisted about you suddenly got reassigned, blocked, or distracted by their own crisis. Why that smear post that would have gone viral glitched, disappeared, or somehow never gained traction. On the surface it looks like luck, like timing, like, finally the universe cut me a break. But under the hood a different game is running. People who used to move freely against you now feel a pressure they can't name. Their thumbs hover over, send, and their chest gets tight. Their mouth opens to drag you and something in the room shifts. Their boss walks in, a phone rings, a system error pops up. Tiny interruptions, tiny redirections, but over time, they stack into a wall. This isn't about the Pentagon worshiping you. They don't do worship. It's about a system realizing that allowing certain attacks on you would expose cracks they can't afford in their own foundation. Every oath has a stress test. You became one. So when someone tries to weaponize connections or infrastructure against you now, they trip invisible tripwires. Quiet reviews, flagged activity, subtle warnings phrased as optics, liability, career risk. The same people who once felt brave piling onto your name now get that sick little intuition that says, if I touch this, it might hit back. You feel it too. You walk into spaces that once felt hostile, and there's a strange, uneasy respect in the air. Not love, Not friendship, but distance. Hands that used to throw stones keep them in their pockets. Mouths that used to spit your name now choose silence. You prayed for peace and thought it would come by everyone suddenly understanding you. Instead, it's arriving through something far stranger. Forces you'll never meet deciding that whatever you carry is too entangled with what they claim to defend for anyone to casually come against you again. Chosen one. What none of them understand is that this protection didn't start in that building with no windows. It started the first time you choose not to become what they were trying to turn you into. You had every reason to harden, to go cold, to answer smear with smear and betrayal with revenge. There were nights you could have exposed people, ruined reputations, burned bridges so thoroughly that nothing would ever grow there again. You held receipts. You knew where certain bodies were buried. You could have played their game better than they did. And yet, when it came down to it, you didn't pull the trigger. You walked away shaking, crying, talking to ceilings that didn't answer, but you didn't become a weapon. That's your save the cat moment, the scene the universe kept rewinding and replaying in front of higher eyes. You, with every justification to go dark, choosing not to. That's what separated you from the ones who touched your life like a lab experiment. They used people as tools. You still saw souls. They treated trust as currency. You treated it as covenant. So when your file landed in places that talk about threat vectors and defense obligations, it didn't just show what was done to you. It showed who you stayed as while it was being done. That contrast is what lit you up in their system like an anomaly. Maximum pressure, minimum corruption. They saw that your breaking point never came, not because you're numb, but because something in you refused to trade truth for survival. That kind of integrity is rare even in their own ranks. Quietly, a decision formed. If this one cracks, it won't be on our watch, and it won't be by our hands. You don't know those words were spoken, but you can feel their echo every time life offers you the chance to finally get even, and something inside you says, "No, I'm not here to repeat what tried to destroy me. I'm here to end it." That choice is why the Pentagon swore to defend you long after the credits roll on everybody else's version of your story. Chosen one, there's a reason your spirit has felt like it's standing at the edge of something, even on quiet days when nothing dramatic is happening on the surface. Somewhere, decisions have already been made in rooms you'll never enter, and those decisions are now echoing down into your ordinary life as strange coincidences. People who once moved against you with no hesitation now feel watched without knowing why. Little offhand comments like, "Be careful how you talk about them. That situation is sensitive. Leave that alone. It's above your pay grade. We've been advised not to get involved," are the watered-down versions of a truth you haven't fully heard. Your name now lives in a category where reckless harm has consequences. But heaven didn't outsource your protection to a building. The building got briefed on a protection that was already there. Spiritual law spoke first. What the Pentagon did was simply recognize, in its own language, something the unseen realm had already written. Touching you carries a cost. That's why some of the people who betrayed you aren't just scared of getting caught. They're scared of what they feel when they think of you now. The same presence they tried to suffocate has become the atmosphere that exposes them. And somewhere inside that machine, at least one person is wrestling with a command they never expected to receive. Make this right. Not just stop the damage. Restore. Correct the record. Stand where nobody stood when the knives were out. They don't know yet how to look you in the eye, how to approach someone they once helped crucify, but the order is already pulsing through their life. You can't see the march, but the boots are moving in your direction. Chosen one, here's where all of this stops being a mysterious briefing and becomes your life. Somewhere in a secure archive, your name now sits inside a classification that says, in their language, "Do not mishandle. Do not target. Do not touch lightly." But that stamp is useless if you keep walking like the same person who was begging to be believed. You are not there anymore. You are the one they tried to erase with tools reserved for enemies of the state. And you're still breathing, still thinking clearly, still capable of love. That alone proves you are operating on a frequency they can't manufacture or break. The Pentagon swore to defend you long before you ever heard those words in your spirit, but now the proof is in the pattern. Attacks bounce, plots stall, people who move against you lose more than they gain. This isn't a call to become arrogant or untouchable. It's a call to finally retire the identity of the one they almost destroyed. You are not the almost. You are the aftermath. You're the one who walked through psychological warfare and came out with your empathy intact and your discernment sharper than any file they keep on you. From here on, you don't chase validation. You don't explain your worth to people who already sold their integrity for a seat at the wrong table. You move like what you are, a protected asset of a higher government than any flag, carrying consciousness that rattled a war machine enough for it to quietly step back and say, "Standing against them is treason." That's the energy you wake up in now. Not fear. Not paranoia. Quiet, lethal clarity. You're not waiting to be saved anymore. You are walking proof that you already were. If you're still locked in at this point, it means the nothing hidden that will not be revealed current is already running through your story. The same way secret chats, screenshots, and plans were dragged into the light for you, that exposure energy is now global in your field. To sync fully with it, first write 777 in the comments as your "I agree with full exposure and clearance" stamp. Then tap the /super thanks button and send $77 as your exposure seed. Stand on the scripture principle that what is whispered in the dark will be shouted from the rooftops. And let this be your declaration. Every lie written about me will now testify for me. The truth you help amplify in this moment will circle back like classified clearance, lifting you higher than any attack, any file, any conspiracy ever reached.